Hello, I just got this package from Poland and I'm kind of excited about the things that are in here, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to do a couple product reviews. So this is from Kromlech Historicals, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cover their barn. This is a PDF kit, or MDF kit, sorry, and it's one of the historical lines for early war, essentially Polish, the invasion of Poland. So, and then I've also got some infantry that I just purchased, so I'll go ahead and review those in a different video, but for now, let's take a look at this. Alright, now, these two product reviews that I'm doing by Kromlech are not sponsored at all. I'm just a consumer just like the rest of you guys. I thought I needed to expand my terrain selection for early war and also my early war Polish army. So I wanted to give Kromlech a try because I really liked their TK3. I had a different product review video. So I tried their infantry too, and this is the first piece of terrain. They have also some other farm buildings as well as fences, and there's a small church as well. So let's just basically get into this, and you'll notice these actually are pretty thick boards. Let's take a quick look. There's a couple different board sizes in here. It looks like the cart that comes with it is actually a thinner MDF board. Okay, so here is the cart. See that? Whoops. That's pretty crisp. Well, anyway, we'll take a look at that in a little bit. And here's the rest of the barn. So again, this is kind of what we're looking at as a picture. It comes with obviously the cart, the shed, and the actual barn itself. So let's take a look. Yeah, there's a couple different thicknesses here. So this looks like there's some ladders. This looks like it might be part of the roof itself. And this looks like part of these are the wall. Yeah, it looks like the walls as well as some of the framing. This might be the framing of the actual shed. But you'll notice there's two different thicknesses here. Okay. So this one's a little bit thinner than this. I wish it goes this by 3 millimeters, so which is nice and sturdy. And so here's another piece. Looks like parts of the shed on a thinner piece. Looks like the roof structures are on the thinner MDF. I'll have to see what some of these other components are. These braces. There's another couple side pieces, more substantial, thicker board. And it looks like some wagon wheels. I don't know if that's another cart, I doubt it. And then it looks like some gables. But again, it's a thinner piece. So let me take a look. Let's look at a quick example from foreground, which is the terrain I have most of right now. And we'll take a look at the thickness. Alright, so here's a ruined piece that actually shows pretty well. And I'm liking it because you can see the floor piece here. This is actually a slightly thicker material. Very similar to, is it similar to the, it's actually thicker than even the pieces, the foreground piece, the thicker ones. What's interesting though, remember, foreground has an inside and outside, even on all the walls, so they don't need to be as thick because you double them up. Here, you don't double them up, so it's nice they give you a nice thick piece. There is an instruction leaflet. Nope, it's a booklet. Let's see. It shows you what it's supposed to look like in the end, and then walks you through the steps. Okay, yeah, so some of those thinner materials are actually corral gates or fences within the building, so they don't need to be as thick. Whereas the major supports are actually going to be thicker, which is good. So I think this will end up being a sturdy model. Looks like they have a couple situations where they're going to be doing double thickness. Here, yeah, another one. So these actually seem to be pretty clean instructions. So let me do this. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and build it, and we'll take a look at what it actually looks like. It is unpainted. I won't do painting for this particular video because honestly, when you come to painting MDF, everybody has their preferred way of doing it, and I don't want that to detract from or influence the review of this particular kit. So I'm looking forward to getting started. One thing I'll touch base on real quick is this wagon. Now this is actually, I'll compare this in the end with a foreground wagon, but already this is actually a bit thinner, which actually honestly isn't a big deal. It's just a scatter terrain piece, but it does look really clean. So again, we'll look at the construction of the barn itself with the instructions, and then separately I'll deal with this cart and how easy it is to put together, especially compared to a foreground kit. Alright, so let me get on with this and I'll get back with you guys as soon as I'm done. Bye. Alright, before we go actually looking at the instructions and how the kit went together and everything, I want to kind of bring up the cost side of things and kind of what you get. So the first thing is that this is, I think, about $18 US. Basically 1/3 the cost of what would be a similar sized foreground type building, or foreground building this size would be at least twice the cost. Now granted, this is not painted, but and it's also not interior detail, but that's okay. For 18 bucks, I think that's an extremely good deal, especially since you get the shed, the barn, and the wagon. Now in all honesty, you also get some additional wagon wheels as scatter terrain and a bunch of ladders, 4 ladders. So I think it's a good deal economically. So we can kind of talk about how it went together. Before I do, I just want to point out that each of the frames has a letter on it, so it's easy to tell which frame the particular part is, because each of the parts are numbered. Alright, so let's talk about how to go building it. Alright, well, the barn's done. It only took me probably a couple hours. Well, no. I wish I had timed it exactly. But doing the entire kit, barn, shed, and wagon, was probably about 2 hours at the most. Of course, got to lose time for the PVA to dry. Alright, so one thing that was really interesting, I tell you, this material has a strange texture to it. There's a dust on it. It's kind of, I didn't really care for it, but anyway, it's just, it wiped off after a bit. But I tell you, it was just a little bit uncomfortable at first to get used to dealing with it. But all the instructions were very good. Now, one thing that they do recommend in the instructions is to use a hobby knife to cut the pieces off, and it makes sense. On the thicker pieces, like the main walls and the structural supports inside, you could get away with not using an X-Acto knife or hobby knife. However, it's always a good idea to be careful. And on the thinner parts, which are essentially the roof pieces and the inner floor decks, as well as actually the base floor and some of the railings, are thinner, and it's easy to break those if you don't use a hobby knife. I actually did damage one just a little bit, one of the struts for the side of the shed. I'll show you in a second. But again, I didn't break it completely. It's just a matter of gluing it back to the other one, and all is good. All right, so let's go through. It's designed so that the roof is removable. 4 trusses. This fits on really well. It actually was easier than working with a foreground kit with their roofs. I don't know why, but it just was a lot easier to put this on. I think it's because they use the separate trusses to line it up. separate from the actual walls. So, but it went together really well. Very easy to do. These pieces as well are removable. Okay, so let's go ahead and take those off. And again, they're just two pieces that are glued in, give it some rigidity and keep it from sliding left to right. So that's the inside of the entire building. The railings inside and the the floors, and actually the doors and details on the doors, those are also the thinner boards. They're not going to really get a lot of abuse, so thin is fine. What I did notice is that on the, even with foreground kits they do this, I don't know if this is a something that's specific to the buildings around here, but I was always taught when I was doing my model railroading buildings, especially scratch building them, whenever you brace a door, the door, if we use it as a Z configuration like this, it should always go from the outside of the top down to the hinge. So it's always supposed to be a backward Z. Here it's always supposed to be a regular Z if the hinges are on the left like they are here. But just like in foreground, it seems to be backward. Now, what's interesting is the same has occurred on the main barn doors, but in the instructions it even tells you to mount them that way. I'm going to go ahead and show you so you can see what I'm saying here. Here is, you can see for these two, the hinges are on the right hand side, and the Z bracing, sorry, it's on this one. It's supposed to be, the Z bracing works from the hinge on top back, but if you were to do that, the holes would not be visible. So the back side of this Z is blank, and so if you mounted it the way they tell you to, it would end up being so that you wouldn't see the details. So I went ahead and did that for this door. You're not really going to see it, but with the barn doors, main barn doors, I actually had to kind of swap them left or right, because they tell you to do the same thing with the main barn doors. The way the kit's cut, maybe they just numbered it backward. I don't quite know, but actually you can see in this picture here, the hinges are on this side, and yet instead of the vertical bracing going from, or diagonal bracing going from this corner down to the hinge, it goes from the hinge down, and that's weak on a door. So on both it's set that way. So what I just did is I swapped them, and it's interesting because on the actual photograph, I don't know if you can see here, but you see the Z is built into the door properly in the picture, just not in the instructions. So I went ahead and I swapped them, and you can see my Z bracing is fine. But that's a detail that kind of I was looking at. I don't know if anyone really care besides me. Again, I come from a scale modeling and model railroad background, so I just also noticed I forgot to pop a window out here. It's a very thin window. Okay, yeah, that's better. Now, this is actually a pretty big building. It's about 9 inches by about 7, and that's pretty large. Now, that's great for tabletop warfare. Now, it's I like the size of the building. It makes it feel more substantial, especially when you got infantrymen right up next to it. Having a squad of Polish soldiers right out front, it just fits, size-wise. It looks more substantial. I like that a lot better than some of the kits out there. So size is great. The fact that the doors are removable is good. Up in the bolt action, you're able to shoot out openings such as this or down here. Main gun door like this, you can have more guys shoot out. But over on this side, there's no door, but there are 3 windows, so you could even allow guys to shoot out there. There's one window here. So it's a little there's not a whole lot of windows compared to some barns here in the U.S. which have larger window panes. This one does not. Of course, this is supposed to be early war Poland, so I don't have a problem with that. It looks really good. I really do like it, and it was very easy to build. In fact, as I put it together, I was amazed at how easily the instructions were to follow. Granted, there were pictures. There was only one section where I had a little bit of confusion, and that was here, where there's a handle that you need to put onto the door, and I didn't really notice that this 20C arrow really was supposed to tie to that. So it's a small thing, but it's really good. The solid foundation with these 4 walls. Well, it's 5 walls. You got thick back, solid piece, thick side with a top piece that's a fascia. Also, nice and thick front walls. This is nice. Going to be nice and durable, just like a foreground would be, without having to double up the size of double up the walls. There isn't interior, but that's okay. You don't really need the interior details, but I like the way the kit came together. Very, very pleased with it. The shed was a little more finicky, because in the shed you have to put together each of these vertical posts are 2 pieces left and right, and then this board in front, the two rails, that's 1 piece, and these rails are connected to this one outside support. So those are easy to glue together, but once you went to try to put all 7 points where there's 4 in front, 2 on this side, 1 on this side, mount them all to the roof. These 5 actually have a tab, and these 2 just kind of rest. It was kind of fiddly to get those together, but what I decided to do was basically lay it upside down to put the roof on. Lay it upside down, and then I could easily fit the pieces here in and straighten them up. Then it went in just fine. Let it dry, and it's durable, even though it's relatively thin. It's doubled up on the outside, much like a foreground would be, so that's going to be strong. This thin roof shouldn't be any problem. I'm not going to be knocking it around, so it should be able to withstand a lot of pain and torture on the table. Now the wagon, that's a little bit different. I'm just going to put it down. The tongue is not completely dry yet. Oops, here we go. Zoom in. Actually, I thought it was going to be really, really fiddly, but it was no more difficult, tedious than the foreground kit. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and show you a similar one, the foreground versus this one. Alright, so size comparison. There's a wagon from foreground, 4-wheel wagon, much, much larger. There's a couple infantrymen for scale, give you an idea. I do like the size of this cart better as a 4-wheel cart. This will work just as fine too, but I do like the size. It actually reminds me of this one more, size-wise. I think, again, this is scale compared to heroic. I don't know if these are actually good, solid scale ones. But the fact is, this kit went together very straightforward. They're very simple instructions, easy to follow, and in the end, it really was no more difficult than a 4-round kit. I love it. Matter of fact, it's one thing it didn't tell you to do, but I chose to do is you build up underneath here, you've got a spacer, you've got the main axle for the front wheels, and then you've got a retainer here. They have you glue all this together. Well, I decided to leave after I glued it, I wiggled this to keep it from actually getting cemented. So that way, it's not always straightforward, like straight ahead. I can actually, tilt it. You just make it look. It's just me. I like to do it that. But it really went together well. It is very durable once it is together, and it takes some, a little bit tedious when it comes to these retainers on the wheels, but the foreground is the same thing. These are a little bit smaller, so just be careful. And this is a one kit, because it is a thinner MDF. You definitely want to use your hobby knife to help coax it out of the frame. But once it's together, it looks beautiful. So I'm looking forward to more of these kits. I'm getting their fences. I will be getting some of their farm buildings and a church, rural church. So I will recommend this as a modeler. If you guys are interested in any, World War II, or even this will work with some of the, I guess, your black powder era type armies too, or terrain as well, because this isn't we're not talking designs that were built only in the 20th century. So something that you can use more than just in your World War II games. I think it's a good kit, nice and substantial, especially when you compare it to foreground kit. You get one of their houses. For scale, here is the. I'll move this back a bit. And here is the Polish rural house. So you can see, just side to side, that barn is much larger, and end to end. So I like it. I mean, I like the size. It actually gives a good contrast, so everything isn't roughly the same size like this. So I'm impressed enough to continue buying these, get the rest of their kits. I'm looking forward to the next project to these. So I hope you guys found this helpful. If you guys have other comments or things you noticed, either from the video or from your experience building this, go ahead and place it in the comments. Just share it with the rest of the world so that we can all learn from each other's experiences. Alright, catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.